The Frog King or the Iron Heinrich? In times long past, when wishing still had its magic, there lived a king who had daughters, all of whom were beautiful. But the youngest was so enchanting that even the sun, who had seen so much, marveled each time he shone upon her face. Near the king's castle lay a vast, shadowy forest, and within that forest, under an ancient linden tree, there was a well. When the days grew warm, the young princess would venture into the woods to sit by the edge of the cool well. Whenever she felt bored, she would take out a golden ball, her most cherished toy, toss it into the air, and catch it again. This simple game was her greatest delight. One day, it happened that the golden ball did not fall back into the little hand of the princess who had thrown it into the air. Instead, it dropped to the ground near the edge of the well and rolled right into the water. The king's daughter watched it with wide eyes as it disappeared into the depths, but the well was so deep that she could not see the bottom. Overcome with sorrow, she began to cry, her tears flowing steadily, and she could not be comforted. As she wept, she heard a voice calling out to her, "Why do you cry so, princess? Your tears could move even a stone to pity." She looked around to find where the voice was coming from and saw a frog with its thick, ugly head poking out of the water. "Oh, it's you, old water splasher," she said. "I am crying because my golden ball has fallen into the well." "Do not weep," replied the frog. "I can help you, but what will you give me if I retrieve your ball for you?" "Anything you wish, dear frog," said she. "My clothes, my pearls and jewels, even the golden crown that I wear." The frog replied, "Your clothes, your pearls and jewels, and your golden crown are not what I desire. But if you will love me and let me be your companion and playmate, let me sit beside you at your table, eat from your little golden plate, drink from your cup, and sleep in your little bed. If you promise me all this, then I will dive down and fetch your golden ball for you." "Oh, yes," she exclaimed. "I promise you everything you ask for, if you will only bring me my ball again." But in her heart she thought, "What nonsense this silly frog speaks. He lives in the water with his kind and can only croak. How could he ever be a companion to a human?" But the frog, upon hearing her promise, plunged his head into the water and disappeared. After a short while, he surfaced again holding the golden ball in his mouth. He tossed it onto the grass near the well. The king's daughter, overjoyed to see her cherished plaything once more, picked it up and ran off with it, completely forgetting about the frog. "Wait, wait!" the frog called after her. "Take me with you. I cannot run as fast as you." But no matter how loudly he croaked, she did not listen. She hurried back to the castle and soon forgot all about the poor frog, who had to return to his well. The next day, as the king's daughter sat at the table with her mother and the courtiers eating from her golden plate, she heard a strange noise. Pitter patter, coming up the marble stairs. Then there was a knock at the door and a voice calling out, "King's daughter, youngest princess, let me in." She ran to see who it could be, but when she opened the door, there sat the frog. Frightened, she quickly shut the door and returned to her seat, feeling very uneasy. The king, noticing her distress, asked, "My child, why are you so afraid? Is there a giant at the door to take you away?" "Oh, no," she replied, "not a giant, but a horrid frog." "And what does the frog want with you?" asked the king. "Dear father," she answered, "yesterday, while I was playing by the well, my golden ball fell into the water. As I cried over its loss, the frog fetched it for me on the condition that I would let him be my companion. I never imagined he could leave his well and follow me, but now he is outside the door, wanting to come in." And then they all heard him knocking the second time and crying, "Youngest princess, open to me, by the well water. Do you not remember what you said to me yesterday? Youngest princess, open to me." "That which you have promised, you must fulfill," said the king. "Go and let him in." So she went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, following her closely until she reached her chair. There he stopped and cried out, "Lift me up to sit beside you." Reluctantly, she delayed until the king commanded her. Once the frog was on the chair, he insisted on climbing onto the table, where he said, "Now push your golden plate a little closer so that we can eat together." She did so, though everyone could see her reluctance, and the frog ate heartily, while every bite seemed to stick in her throat. "I have had my fill," the frog declared at last. I am tired now. Carry me to your room, prepare your silken bed, and we will lie down and sleep." Hearing this, the king's daughter began to weep, fearing the cold frog who insisted on sharing her clean, beautiful bed. The king grew angry with her, saying, "That which you promised in your time of need, you must now fulfill." Grasping the frog with her fingers, she carried him upstairs and placed him in a corner. When she lay down to sleep, he crept up to her, saying, "I am tired and want to sleep as much as you do. Take me up, or I will tell your father." Overcome with anger, she seized the frog and hurled him with all her might against the wall, exclaiming, "Now will you be quiet, you horrid frog?" But as he fell, he ceased to be a frog and transformed into a prince with beautiful and kind eyes. With her father's approval, they became betrothed. He explained to her how a wicked witch had enchanted him, and only she could have freed him. Together, they planned to journey to his father's kingdom. At that moment, a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, adorned with white plumes and golden harness, arrived at the door. Standing behind the carriage was faithful Henry, the servant of the young prince. Faithful Henry had suffered so greatly when his master was transformed into a frog that he had placed 3 iron bands around his heart to prevent it from breaking with sorrow and worry. Overjoyed at his master's deliverance, faithful Henry assisted them into the carriage and took his place behind. As they began their journey to the prince's kingdom, the prince heard a noise from behind the carriage, as if something had broken. He turned around and exclaimed, "Henry, the carriage must be breaking." "It is not the carriage, my lord, but the band around my heart, which to ease its sorrow, when I grieved for your plight, I bound around my heart." Again and once more, the same noise was heard. The prince thought the carriage was breaking, but it was actually the remaining bands breaking from faithful Henry's heart, now relieved and filled with happiness. Cat and mouse in partnership. A cat had become acquainted with a mouse and had spoken so much to her about the great love and friendship it felt for her that the mouse finally agreed to live together with her and to manage the household together. "But we must prepare for winter, otherwise we will suffer hunger," said the cat. "Little mouse, you cannot go everywhere and might end up in a trap." This good advice was followed, and a pot of fat was purchased. However, they did not know where to store it. After much consideration, the cat said, "I know of no place where it would be better stored than in the church. No one dares take anything from there. We will put it under the altar and not touch it until we need it." So the pot was safely stored away, but it was not long before the cat longed for it. The cat said to the mouse, "I wanted to tell you, little mouse, that I have been invited by my cousin to be a godparent. She has given birth to a little son, white with brown spots, whom I am to hold over the baptismal font. Let me go out today, and you take care of the house alone." "Yes, yes," answered the mouse. "Go in God's name. If you eat something good, think of me too. I would like to drink a drop of sweet red christening wine." However, all this was not true. The cat had no cousin and had not been invited to be a godparent. It went straight to the church, crept up to the pot of fat, began to lick it, and licked off the fat. Then it went for a walk on the roofs of the town, looked around for opportunities, and then stretched out in the sun, licking its whiskers whenever it thought of the pot of fat. It did not return home until evening. "Well, here you are again," said the mouse. "You must have had a happy day." "It was all right," answered the cat. "What name did they give the child?" asked the mouse. "Topoff," said the cat very dryly. "Topoff," cried the mouse. That is a very odd and unusual name. Is it common in your family?" "What does that matter?" said the cat. "It is no worse than Crumb Thief, as your godchildren are called." Not long after, the cat was overcome by another craving. It said to the mouse, "You must do me a favor and manage the household alone once more. I have been asked again to be a godparent, and since the child has a white ring around its neck, I cannot refuse." The good mouse agreed, but the cat sneaked behind the town wall to the church and ate half of the pot of fat. "There's nothing tastier than what one eats oneself," it said, quite satisfied with its day's work. When it returned home, the mouse asked, "What name was given to the child at its christening?" "Half Gone," replied the cat. "Half Gone? What are you saying? I've never heard that name in my life. I bet it's not even in the calendar." Soon the cat's mouth watered again for the tasty treat. All good things come in threes, it said to the mouse. I've been asked to be a godparent again. The child is completely black with only white paws. It happens only once every few years. You'll let me go, won't you? Topoff. Half gone, replied the mouse. They are such peculiar names, they make me ponder. Here you sit at home, said the cat, with your dark gray fur coat and long hair braid, musing. That's what happens when you don't go out during the day. During the cat's absence, the mouse tidied the house, but the greedy cat ate all the remaining fat. One only finds peace after everything is gone, it said to itself. Well fed and plump, it did not return home until nightfall. The mouse immediately asked what name had been given to the third child. You won't like it either, said the cat. Its name is Allgone. Allgone, cried the mouse. That's the most troubling name of all. I've never seen it in writing. Allgone, what does it mean? Then she shook her head, curled up, and went to sleep. From then on, no one invited the cat to be a godparent. But when winter came and nothing could be found outside, the mouse remembered their stored food and said, Come, cat, let's go to our pot of fat that we've saved. It will taste good now. Yes, replied the cat. You'll enjoy it as if you're sticking your delicate tongue out the window. They set off, but when they arrived, the pot of fat was still in place, yet empty. Oh, said the mouse, now I see what happened. Now it's clear. You're a true friend. You ate everything while you were being a godparent. First Topoff, then Half Gone, then... Be quiet, cried the cat. One more word and I'll eat you too. All Gone was already on the poor mouse's lips. Before she knew it, the cat pounced, seized her, and swallowed her whole. That's how it goes in the world. Near a vast forest lived a woodcutter with his wife, who had only one child, a little girl of 3 years. They were so poor that they could no longer afford daily bread and did not know how to feed her. One morning, the woodcutter went out to work in the forest, full of worries. As he chopped wood, a tall and beautiful woman suddenly appeared before him, wearing a crown of shining stars on her head. She said to him, I am the Virgin Mary, the mother of the Christ child. You are poor and in need. Bring your child to me, and I will take her with me, be her mother, and care for her. The woodcutter obeyed, fetched his child, and entrusted her to the Virgin Mary, who took her up to heaven. There, the child thrived, eating sugar cakes, drinking sweet milk, and wearing clothes of gold. The little angels played with her. When she turned 14, the Virgin Mary summoned her and said, Dear child, I am about to embark on a long journey. Take the keys to the 13 doors of heaven into your keeping. You may open 12 of them and behold the splendor within, but the 13th, which this small key unlocks, is forbidden to you. Beware of opening it, or you will bring misery upon yourself. The girl promised obedience. After the Virgin Mary departed, she began to explore the dwellings of the heavenly kingdom. Each day, she opened one of the doors until she had unlocked the 12. In each, she found one of the apostles surrounded by great light, and she rejoiced in the magnificence, accompanied by the joyful little angels. Only the forbidden door remained, and she felt a strong desire to know what lay behind it. She said to the angels, I won't fully open it or enter, but I'll unlock it just to peek through. Oh no, said the angels, that would be a sin. The Virgin Mary forbade it, and it could easily lead to your unhappiness. She fell silent, but the desire in her heart persisted, gnawing at her and tormenting her without rest. One day, when all the angels had left, she thought, Now I am completely alone. I could take a quick peek. No one will ever know. She found the key, placed it in the lock, and turned it. The door swung open, revealing the Trinity seated in fire and splendor. She stood there in awe for a moment, then reached out and touched the light with her finger. Instantly, her finger turned completely golden. A deep fear gripped her. She slammed the door shut and fled. The terror continued to haunt her, and her heart raced incessantly, refusing to calm down. The golden color on her finger remained, resisting all attempts to wash or rub it off. It was not long before the Virgin Mary returned from her journey. She called the girl to her and asked for the keys to heaven back. When the girl handed over the bundle, the Virgin looked into her eyes and said, Have you not also opened the 13th door? No, she replied. Then the Virgin Mary placed her hand on the girl's heart, feeling how it beat and beat, and realized that she had disobeyed her command and opened the door. She asked again, "Are you sure you did not do it?" "Yes," the girl said for the second time. Then the Virgin noticed the finger that had turned golden from touching the heavenly fire and understood that the child had sinned. She asked for the third time, "Did you not do it?" "No," said the girl for the third time. Then the Virgin Mary said, "You did not obey me, and furthermore, you lied. You are no longer worthy to be in heaven." Upon this, the girl fell into a deep sleep, and when she awoke, she found herself lying on the ground below, in the midst of a wilderness. She tried to cry out, but no sound came from her mouth. She jumped up and tried to run away, but wherever she turned, she was blocked by thick hedges of thorns that she could not break through. In the desert where she was imprisoned, there stood an old hollow tree, which became her dwelling. She crawled into it at night to sleep, and found shelter there from storms and rain. Yet it was a wretched life, and she wept bitterly when she remembered how happy she had been in heaven, and how the angels had played with her. Roots and wild berries became her only food, which she searched for as far as she could go. In autumn, she gathered fallen nuts and leaves, storing them in her hole. Nuts sustained her through winter, and when snow and ice came, she burrowed among the leaves like a small creature to avoid freezing. Before long, her clothes were torn to pieces, and one bit after another fell away. When the sun warmed, she sat in front of the tree, her long hair covering her like a mantle. Thus, year after year, she sat, feeling the pain and misery of the world. One day, when the trees were once again dressed in fresh green, the king of the land was hunting in the forest and was chasing a deer. As it had fled into the thicket that enclosed that part of the forest, he dismounted, tore through the bushes, and cleared a path with his sword. When he finally made his way through, he saw a remarkably beautiful maiden sitting under a tree. She sat there, her entire body covered in golden hair down to her feet. He stood still, amazed, then addressed her and asked, "Who are you? Why are you sitting here in the wilderness?" There was no answer, as she could not open her mouth. The king continued, "Will you come with me to my castle?" She merely nodded slightly. The king lifted her into his arms, placed her on his horse, and rode home with her. Upon reaching the royal castle, he dressed her in splendid garments and provided her with everything in abundance. Though she could not speak, she was so beautiful and charming that he grew to love her deeply, and before long, he married her. About a year later, the queen gave birth to a son. That night, when she lay alone in her bed, the Virgin Mary appeared to her and said, "If you will tell the truth and confess that you unlocked the forbidden door, I will open your mouth and restore your speech. But if you persist in your sin and stubbornly deny it, I will take your newborn child with me." The queen was given the opportunity to respond, but she remained adamant and said, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." The Virgin Mary then took the newborn child from her arms and disappeared with him. The next morning, when the child could not be found, murmurs spread among the people that the queen was a cannibal and had killed her own child. She heard all this but could not refute it. However, the king, who loved her deeply, refused to believe such accusations. When a year had passed, the queen gave birth to another son, and once again in the night the Virgin Mary appeared to her and said, "If you confess that you opened the forbidden door, I will give you back your child and restore your speech. But if you persist in your sin and deny it, I will also take this newborn child with me." The queen again replied, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." Then the Virgin Mary took the child from her arms and carried him away to heaven. The next morning, when the child had vanished again, people loudly proclaimed that the queen had devoured him, and the king's counselors demanded that she be brought to trial. However, the king loved her so dearly that he refused to believe it and ordered his counselors under penalty of death to speak no more of it. In the following year, the queen gave birth to a beautiful little daughter, and for the third time, the Virgin Mary appeared to her at night and said, "Follow me." She took the queen by the hand and led her to heaven, showing her there her two eldest children who smiled at her and played with the globe. When the queen rejoiced at this sight, the Virgin Mary said, "Is your heart still not softened? If you admit that you opened the forbidden door, I will return your two little sons to you." But for the third time, the queen replied, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." Then the virgin let her sink back to earth once more and took away her third child as well. Next morning, when the news spread, everyone loudly exclaimed, "The queen is a man-eater. She must be condemned." The king could no longer hold back his counselors. A trial was conducted, and because she could not speak or defend herself, she was sentenced to be burned at the stake. Wood was gathered, and once she was securely bound to the post and the fire began to blaze around her, the icy pride in her heart melted, and she was moved by remorse. She thought, "If only I could confess before I die that I opened the door." At that moment, her voice returned, and she cried out loudly, "Yes, Mary, I did it." Immediately, rain poured from the sky and extinguished the flames. A light broke through above her, and the Virgin Mary descended with her two little sons at her side and the newborn daughter in her arms. She spoke kindly to the queen, saying, "He who repents his sin and confesses it is forgiven." Then she returned the three children to her, untied her tongue, and bestowed happiness upon her for the rest of her life. Tale of the youth who went out to learn what it is to shudder. A certain father had two sons. The elder was clever and capable, excelling in all he did, while the younger was foolish and struggled to grasp anything. People would often comment, "He'll surely be a burden to his father." Whenever tasks needed doing, it was always the elder who took charge. However, if their father asked for something late at night, especially if it meant passing through a churchyard or another eerie place, the elder would refuse, saying, "Oh no, father, I won't go there. It gives me the shivers." He was afraid of such places. Similarly, during evening storytelling by the fire, when tales were told that made others shudder, they would say, "Oh, it makes us shudder." The younger brother would listen with them, puzzled by their reactions. "They keep saying, 'It makes me shudder. It makes me shudder.'" "But it doesn't make me shudder," he thought. "That must be some skill I don't understand." One day, their father addressed the younger son who sat in the corner, saying, "Listen, you in the corner there, you're growing tall and strong. You too must learn something to earn your keep. Look at how your brother works, but you don't even earn your salt." "Well, father," he replied, "I'm willing to learn something. In fact, if possible, I'd like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand that at all yet." The elder brother laughed upon hearing this, thinking to himself, "Goodness, what a fool my brother is. He'll never amount to anything in his life. He who wants to be a sickle must bend himself in good time." The father sighed and responded, "You'll learn what it means to shudder soon enough, but you won't earn your bread that way." Soon after, the sexton paid a visit to the father's house, and the father lamented his troubles, explaining how his younger son was so inept in everything that he neither knew nor learned anything. "Imagine," he said, "when I asked him how he intended to earn his keep, he actually expressed a desire to learn how to shudder." "If that's all," replied the sexton, "he can learn that with me. Send him to me and I'll teach him a thing or two." The father agreed, thinking it might toughen the boy up a bit. So the sexton took him into his home and assigned him the task of ringing the church bell. After a few days, the sexton woke him up at midnight and instructed him to climb the church tower and ring the bell. "He'll soon learn what it means to shudder," thought the sexton, sneaking ahead. When the boy reached the top of the tower and turned around to grasp the bell rope, he spotted a white figure standing on the stairs opposite the opening for the sound to escape. "Who's there?" he called out, but the figure remained silent and unmoving. "Answer me," the boy demanded, "or get out of here. You have no business here at night." The sexton, however, stood motionless to make the boy believe he was a ghost. The boy called out a second time, "What are you doing here? Speak up if you're an honest man, or I'll throw you down the stairs." The sexton thought to himself, "He can't possibly mean what he says," and stayed quiet, pretending to be as still as stone. When the boy called out to him for the third time and received no response, he charged at the figure and pushed it down the stairs. It tumbled down 10 steps and lay still in a corner. After this, the boy rang the bell, returned home, said nothing, and went straight to bed, falling asleep immediately. The sexton's wife waited a long time for her husband to return, but he never did. Worried, she woke the boy and asked, "Do you know where my husband is?" He went up the tower before you did." "No, I don't know," replied the boy. "But someone was standing by the sound hole on the other side of the stairs. Since he wouldn't answer me or leave, I took him for a scoundrel and pushed him downstairs. Go see if it was him. I hope I didn't hurt him." The woman hurried off and found her husband moaning in pain, with a broken leg from the fall. She carried him down, then hurried with loud cries to the boy's father. "Your son," she exclaimed, "has caused a great disaster. He pushed my husband down the stairs and broke his leg. Get this good-for-nothing out of our house." The father, shocked, rushed over and scolded the boy severely. "What wicked pranks are these?" he demanded. "The devil must have whispered these thoughts into your head." "Father," the boy pleaded, "listen to me. I'm completely innocent. He was there at night, looking like someone with ill intentions. I didn't know who he was, and I asked him 3 times to speak or leave." "Ah," sighed the father, "you only bring me trouble. Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you anymore." "Yes, father, gladly," replied the boy. "Just wait until daylight. Then I will go out and learn how to shudder. At least I'll master a skill that can sustain me." "Learn whatever you wish," said the father dismissively. "It's all the same to me. Here are 50 thalers for you. Take them and go into the wide world. Don't tell anyone where you're from or who your father is. I have reason to be ashamed because of you." "Yes, father, as you wish," the boy agreed. "If that's all you ask, I can easily remember that." As dawn broke, the boy pocketed the 50 thalers, stepped onto the highway, and kept muttering to himself, "If only I could shudder! If only I could shudder!" Soon, a man overheard his conversation with himself. As they walked further, they saw the gallows in the distance. The man said to him, "Look, there's the tree where 7 men have married the rope maker's daughter and are now learning how to fly. Sit beneath it and wait until nightfall. Then you'll surely learn how to shudder." "If that's all that's needed," replied the boy, "that's easily done. But if I learn to shudder so quickly, you shall have my 50 thalers. Come back to me early tomorrow morning." The boy went to the gallows, sat beneath it, and waited until evening. Feeling cold, he started a fire. But at midnight, the wind blew so sharply that despite the fire, he couldn't warm up. As the wind knocked the hanged men against each other, causing them to sway back and forth, he thought, "You're shivering by the fire. What must it be like up there, freezing and suffering?" Moved by pity, he leaned a ladder against the gallows, climbed up, and untied them one by one, bringing all 7 down. Then he stoked the fire, blew on it, and positioned the men around it to warm themselves. However, they sat there motionless, their clothes catching fire. He warned them, "Be careful, or I'll hang you back up." But the dead men remained silent, allowing their rags to burn away. Growing angry, he declared, "If you won't listen, I can't help you. I won't burn with you." And one by one, he hung them back up. He returned to his fire and fell asleep. The next morning, the man returned, wanting his 50 thalers, and asked, "Now, do you know what it means to shudder?" "No," replied the boy. "How would I know? Those up there didn't utter a word, and were so foolish they let their few old rags burn." The man realized he wouldn't get the 50 thalers that day, muttered, "I've never met anyone like him," and walked away. The youth continued on his journey, repeating to himself, "Ah, if only I could shudder! Ah, if only I could shudder!" A wagoner who was walking behind him overheard and asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know," replied the youth. "Where do you come from?" the wagoner inquired. "I do not know," was the youth's answer. "Who is your father?" pressed the wagoner. "I am not allowed to tell you that," the youth responded. "What is it that you keep muttering under your breath?" asked the wagoner. "Ah," sighed the youth, "I just wish I could shudder, but no one can teach me how." "Stop your foolish talk," the wagoner advised. "Come, accompany me. I'll see what I can do for you." So the youth went with the wagoner, and by evening they reached an inn where they planned to spend the night. As they entered the inn, the youth once again exclaimed loudly, "If only I could shudder! If only I could shudder!" Hearing this, the host chuckled and remarked, "If that's what you want, there should be ample opportunity for that here." "Ah, hush," interjected the hostess. "Many curious souls have lost their lives already. It would be a pity if those beautiful eyes of yours never saw daylight again." Undeterred, the youth insisted, "However difficult it may be, I will learn it. That's precisely why I set out on this journey. He pestered the host until he revealed that not far away stood a haunted castle where anyone could learn to shudder by spending 3 nights there. The king had promised his daughter's hand in marriage to whoever dared, and she was the most beautiful maiden under the sun. In addition, great treasures guarded by evil spirits awaited discovery, which could make a poor man wealthy. Many had entered the castle, but none had returned. The next morning, the youth approached the king and declared his intention to spend 3 nights in the haunted castle, if allowed. Impressed by the youth's determination, the king granted him permission and allowed him to take 3 lifeless items with him. I ask for a fire, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with a knife, the youth requested. The king agreed, and preparations began for the youth's venture into the haunted castle, where he hoped to finally learn what it meant to shudder. The king had all these things brought into the castle during the day. As night approached, the young man went upstairs, lit a bright fire in a chamber, placed the carving bench with the knife beside it, and seated himself at the lathe. "Ah, if only I could feel frightened," he exclaimed, "but I won't learn it here either." Towards midnight, he decided to stoke his fire. As he blew into it, suddenly a voice cried from a corner, "Oh, meow! We're freezing!" "You fools," he called out, "why are you shouting? If you're cold, come sit by the fire and warm up." And with that, 2 large black cats leaped over in a powerful bound, sat down on either side of him, and stared at him fiercely with their fiery eyes. After a while, once they had warmed themselves, they said, "Comrade, shall we play a game of cards?" "Why not?" he replied. "But first show me your paws." They stretched out their claws. "Oh," he said, "what long nails you have! Wait, I must cut them for you first." With that, he grabbed them by the scruff, placed them on the carving bench, and fastened their paws securely. "I've seen your claws," he said, "and now I've lost interest in playing cards." He struck them dead and tossed them into the water. But after he had dealt with these 2 and was about to sit back down by his fire, black cats and dogs with glowing chains came pouring out from every nook and cranny, more and more until he couldn't move, howling horribly, trampling his fire, tearing it apart, and trying to extinguish it. He watched quietly for a while, but when it became too much, he grabbed his carving knife and shouted, "Away with you, you vermin!" He swung at them. Some fled, others he killed, and threw them into the pond. When he returned, he blew on the embers to rekindle his fire and warm himself. As he sat there, he couldn't keep his eyes open any longer and felt the urge to sleep. Glancing around, he spotted a large bed in the corner. "That's just right for me," he said, and climbed in. But as he was about to close his eyes, the bed began to move on its own, rolling through the entire castle. "That's good," he said, "but faster." The bed rolled as if pulled by 6 horses, up and down over thresholds and stairs, until suddenly, hop, hop, it overturned, the bottom now on top, crushing him like a mountain. He tossed pillows and blankets into the air, climbed out, and said, "Now whoever wants to can go ahead," and lay down by his fire, sleeping until daybreak. In the morning, the king came, and upon seeing him lying on the ground, he thought the spirits had killed him and he was dead. "It's a shame," he said. "He's such a handsome man." The youth heard this, got up, and said, "It's not that bad yet." The king was astonished but pleased and asked how it had gone. "Very well," he replied. "1 night has passed, and the other 2 will pass as well." When he went to the innkeeper, the man widened his eyes and said, "I never expected to see you alive again. Have you learned how to shudder yet?" "No," he said, "it's all in vain. If only someone could tell me." The second night, he went up to the old castle again, sat by the fire, and began his usual song, "If I could just shudder." As midnight approached, there was a commotion and crashing noises heard, at first soft, then growing louder and louder. After a brief, quiet spell, suddenly half a man came tumbling down the chimney with a loud scream and landed in front of him. "Hey there," he exclaimed. "Another half is needed for this to count. That's too little." The uproar resumed, raging and howling, and the other half also came crashing down. "Wait," he said, "let me stoke the fire a bit for you first." After doing so and looking around, he found the 2 halves had come together, forming a terrifying man seated in his place. "That wasn't part of our deal," said the youth. "This bench is mine." The man tried to push him away, but the youth resisted, pushing him back with all his might and reclaiming his seat. Then more men fell down, one after another, bringing 9 dead men's legs and 2 skulls. They set them up and played skittles with them. The youth wanted to join in and asked, "Hey there, can I play too?" "Yes, if you have money." "Plenty of money," he replied, "but your balls aren't quite round." He took the skulls, put them on the lathe, and turned them until they were round. "There, now they'll roll better," he said. "Hurrah! Now it's lively." He played with them, losing some of his money, but when the clock struck 12, everything vanished before his eyes. He lay down and fell peacefully asleep. The next morning, the king came to inquire about him. "How did it go this time?" he asked. "I played skittles," he replied, "and lost a few coins." "Didn't you shudder at all?" "Oh, come on," he said. "I had a great time. If only I knew what it meant to shudder." In the third night, he sat again on his bench and muttered discontentedly, "If only I could shudder." As it grew late, 6 tall men entered carrying a coffin. He exclaimed, "Ha ha, that must be my cousin who passed away just a few days ago," and beckoned, calling out, "Come, cousin, come." They placed the coffin on the ground, and he went over, lifted the lid, and found a dead man inside. He touched his face, but it was cold as ice. "Wait," he said, "let me warm you a bit." He went to the fire, warmed his hand, and placed it on the dead man's face, but it remained cold. Then he took him out, sat by the fire, laid him on his lap, and rubbed his arms to get the blood circulating again. When that didn't work either, he thought to himself, when 2 people lie in bed together, they warm each other. And so he carried him to bed, covered him, and lay down beside him. After a while, the dead man also warmed up and started moving. The youth said, "See, cousin, didn't I warm you?" But the dead man began to threaten, "Now I will strangle you." "What?" exclaimed the youth. "Is this how you thank me? Back into your coffin you go." He lifted him up, threw him in, and closed the lid. The 6 men then came and carried him away again. "I still can't manage to shudder," he said. "I'll never learn it as long as I live here." Then a man entered, taller and more terrifying than the rest, though he was old with a long white beard. "You wretch," he cried, "you shall soon learn what it is to shudder, for you shall die." "Not so fast," replied the youth. "If I'm to die, I must have a say in it." "I will seize you," threatened the fiend. "Easy now, don't be so sure. I am as strong as you, perhaps even stronger," the youth countered. "Let's find out," said the old man. He led him through dark passages to a blacksmith's forge, took an axe, and with one blow drove an anvil into the ground. "I can do better than that," said the youth, and went to the other anvil. The old man watched closely, his white beard hanging down. The youth took the axe, split the anvil with a single blow, and caught the old man's beard in it. "Now I've got you," said the youth. "Now it's your turn to face death." He grabbed an iron bar and struck the old man until he begged and promised great riches in exchange for stopping. The youth released him, and the old man led him back to the castle, showing him 3 chests of gold in a cellar. "One part is for the poor, another for the king, and the third is yours," he said. As the clock struck 12, the spirit vanished, leaving the youth in darkness. "I'll find my way out," he said confidently, feeling his way to the room and falling asleep by his fire. The next morning, the king arrived and asked, "Have you learned what it is to shudder?" "No," replied the youth. "What is it?" "My dead cousin was here, and a bearded man showed me a lot of money below, but no one explained what shuddering is." "Then," said the king, "you have freed the castle and shall marry my daughter." "That's all well and good," said the youth, "but I still don't know what shuddering is." The gold was brought up, and the wedding festivities began. However, despite how much he loved his wife and how happy he was, he kept saying, "If only I could shudder, if only I could shudder." This eventually annoyed his wife. Her maid said, "I'll find a solution for him. He'll learn to shudder soon." She went to the stream in the garden and had a bucket full of gudgeons brought to her. That night, while the young king slept, his wife uncovered him and poured the cold water with the gudgeons over him, making the little fish wriggle about. When he woke up, he cried out, "Oh, what makes me shudder so? What makes me shudder so, dear wife? Ah, now I know what it is to shudder." 5. The Wolf and the 7 Young Kids. Once upon a time, there was an old goat who had 7 young kids, whom she loved as much as any mother loves her children. One day, she wanted to go into the woods to fetch food, so she called all her kids and said, "Dear children, I am going out into the woods. While I am gone, beware of the wolf. If he should come in, he will eat you all up, skin, hair, and everything. The villain often disguises himself, but you can always recognize him by his rough voice and black feet." "Dear mother," answered the kids, "you need not fear. We will be careful." Then the mother bleated goodbye and went off with an easy mind. It was not long before someone knocked on the house door and said, "Open up, dear children. Your mother is here and has brought each of you something from the woods." But the kids recognized by the rough voice that it was the wolf. "We will not open," they cried. "You are not our mother, for she has a gentle and sweet voice, but your voice is rough. You must be the wolf." So the wolf went away to a shop and bought a big piece of chalk, which he ate, and that made his voice soft. Then he came back, knocked at the door, and said, "Open up, dear children. Your mother is here and has brought each of you something from the woods." But the wolf had put his black paw in through the window, and the kids saw it and cried, "We will not open up. Our mother has not a black foot like you. You must be the wolf." So the wolf ran to the baker and said, "I have hurt my foot. Spread some dough over it for me." And when the baker had done that, he ran to the miller and said, "Strew some white meal over my foot for me." But the miller thought to himself, "The wolf wants to deceive someone," and he refused to do it. But the wolf said, "If you do not do it, I will eat you up." Then the miller was afraid and did what he was asked. And so that is how people are. Now the rogue went for the third time to the door, knocked at it, and said, "Open up, dear children. Your mother is here and has brought each of you something from the woods." Then the kid said, "First, show us your paw so that we know you are our mother." But the wolf put his paw in through the window, and when the kids saw that it was white, they believed that all he said was true, and they opened the door. But who came in was the wolf. They were terrified and wanted to hide themselves. One sprang under the table, the second into the bed, the third into the stove, the fourth into the kitchen, the fifth into the cupboard, the sixth under the washing bowl, and the seventh into the clock case. But the wolf found them all, and did not take long to gulp them down, one after the other. Only the youngest in the clock case he did not find. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he went outside and lay down under a tree and fell asleep. Before long, the old goat came back from the woods. Ah, what did she see there? The door stood wide open. The table, chairs, and benches were overturned. The washing bowl was broken to pieces. The covers and pillows were pulled off the bed. She looked for her children, but they were nowhere to be found. She called them one after the other by name, but no one answered. At last, when she called the youngest, a small voice cried out, "Dear mother, I am here in the clock case." She fetched him out, and he told her that the wolf had come and eaten all the others. Then you can think how she wept over her poor children. At length in her grief she went out, and the youngest kid ran with her. When they came to the meadow, there lay the wolf under a tree and snored so that the branches shook. She looked at him carefully on all sides, and she noticed how something inside his body was moving and struggling. "Dear me," thought she, "can it be that my poor children whom he devoured for his evening meal are still alive?" Then the kid had to run back and fetch scissors and a needle and thread. Then the goat cut open the monster's stomach, and no sooner had she made one cut than one little kid after another jumped out, all 6 of them, and all were still alive and had suffered no harm, for in his greediness the rogue had swallowed them down whole. Oh, what joy there was! Then they embraced their dear mother and jumped about like a tailor at his wedding. But the old goat said, "Now go and find some big stones, and we will fill the rogue's stomach with them while he is still asleep." Then the 7 kids hurried to fetch the stones, and they stuffed his stomach full, and the mother quickly sewed him up again, so that he noticed nothing and did not even move. When the wolf at last woke up and got up, the stones in his stomach made him very thirsty. As he wanted to go to a well to drink, they knocked and rattled together inside him. Then he cried out, "What rumbles and tumbles inside me so round? I thought 'twas 6 kids, but it's stones I have found." And when he came to the well and stooped over the water to drink, the heavy stones weighed him down, and he fell over into the water and drowned. And when the 7 kids saw that, they came running up crying, "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" And they danced with their mother all around the well for joy.